What's up, everyone? You're listening to the InCamp podcast, and I'm your host, Aaron Hepler. Thanks so much for joining me today. Thanks for tuning in. This is the show where we talk all hunting, all fishing, all the hard-earned lessons that keep us coming back season after season. We talk stories. There is some how-to intertwined, but this is not a how-to strategy show. This is where we use how-to show off the experience of the hunt, to experience what our guests have experienced, to just really enjoy why we actually hunt and fish. So thanks again for joining me. This week on the show, I had somebody that's pretty important to me. I had a few people give me advice before I went on my first elk hunting trip in 2022. And this man that I had on today was somebody that gave me was somebody who didn't give me a lot of encouragement, but I reached out to him and he was willing to talk to me. He was willing to give me the encouragement and a couple of tips along the way. And I did fill an elk tag at that time. So I'm really thankful to this guy. And honestly, he has enough how-to information to go around. So we do intertwine it in some of this. There's going to be a field notes episode that you'll get to listen to later with some strategy talk. But I really wanted to learn from my guest today, Dirk Durham. I wanted to learn from his full life and his experience and why he keeps hunting year after year, and he grinds and he works in the outdoor industry. This is a really great episode. Dirk had some really great stories and, quite frankly, some emotional ones too, because the Durham family has had a year in 2025 and they're coming out on top. So you'll get to hear about that. And it is just a really special episode. So thanks for listening. If you would, I don't ask for this often during the beginning of the show, but if you would, please leave me a review and a rating. It really helps the show reach more ears. Selfishly, I started this podcast because I wanted to get to talk to all these guests and get to learn about their life. But quite honestly, I wanted to share them with you as a listener. And these are people that I've found to be important in the outdoors. So I hope you really enjoy this episode. I know I did. This is InCamp Podcast. So what I really, really have to ask you before we get started is, how do you grow such a nice white beard that's so full? How do you do it? What's the secret?
You have to have a big belly to go with it so you look like Santa Claus. No, it's terrible. I was so mad. I spent 18 years of my younger years working a job that I had to shave every single day. It was like military. I worked for this company. I had to shave every day. I had to wear a belt. I had to wear black boots. It was very, very, very tough situation. And today, that same company, they allow beards and tattoos, and they've, it's harder to hire for blue collar work these days, it seems like. So, they've kind of lifted their restrictions. But anyway, once I didn't work there anymore, I started growing facial hair, and I'm like, dang it. Tell my wife, I'm like, I spent the best years of my life when I could grow dark facial hair. Now it's freaking got lots of white in it. And then from there, it's just gone downhill. It's just, now there's a little bit of black in there, but man, it's pretty dang white.
I told my wife, we're thinking about we have a couple dogs, and we're thinking about getting another bird dog. And I said, if we get that kind, it'll match the side of my.
I have a yellow lab that's pretty much white, snow white, and he matches my beard.
Do you do a little duck hunting?
I don't. No. I don't. I've never gone duck hunting in my life. My dogs don't even. Well, they know what ducks are from the park I take them to, but I've just never gone into duck hunting.
Yeah, I tried it for a couple of years. It's fun, but it's not my favorite thing,
Yeah.
Mostly because I don't like to eat them at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah. It's a lot of work too to clean them.
Yeah, I always feel like I could hunt a deer, which is like shooting a lot of ducks. or I can shoot a handful of ducks every year. So
yeah, for sure.
So what I know about Dirk is, you're the marketing guy for Phelps. Mm-hmm. You work with Meat Eater. You're well known in the elk hunting circuit. You kill all kinds of stuff. You're always hunting something, and you're an elk calling champion. But what would your friends say about Dirk?
Um, let's see. I have this one buddy. We all got nicknames for each other, and we call him Johnny Ringo, but he calls me a BSer. He's like, "Oh, Dirk, he's a BSer," and I don't know if he's saying that to try to get me going, or if he really thinks that, because we'll be hunting and we'll hear a bugle. I'm like, "Oh, did you hear that? That's a really nice 6-point, kind of weak on his right side, and he's got like a little devil tine, I bet, growing." I kind of give this BS line about what this elk looks like just from hearing the bugle, and he'll look at me like, freaking crazy, man. But I don't know. But I will say this also. I'm pretty sarcastic, super sarcastic, and I've gotten so good at it that I make my wife mad because she thinks I'm serious, and I'm like, that was sarcasm. She's like, no, it wasn't. I'm like, yes, it is. I'm like, I think I've mastered sarcasm enough to where, man, I really got to back off on it. Got to like smirk or like little chuckle or something so people will understand, because I'm like, I don't wonder if he thinks I'm being for real or if I'm being sarcastic. So that's one thing my buddy, some buddies would probably say. My brother-in-law Randy, who we've been best friends since 7th grade, he calls me a performer. I'm like, a performer? What do you mean? He's like, oh, you're a performer. I'm like, I'm not a performer. I feel like I'm kind of introverted, but I'm weird because I can be introverted, but I'm also sometimes extrovert. I don't really like talking in front of a big crowd and stuff, but also I don't mind getting up and singing some karaoke or, doing something silly for a laugh. But
I forget what they're calling it now, but there is a third type. I forget what they're calling it, but it's not an introvert. It's not an introvert. It's not an extrovert. It's the one that's in between that kind of just watches everybody, but does like to be social from time to time.
Yeah.
We'll have to Google that after this.
Yeah. It's a weirdo.
So,
I'm a weirdo.
Yeah, weirdo. I might fall in that category too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Where did you get your background as a hunter and in the calling circuit?
So I grew up in a hunting family, and my dad, he was 50 when I was born. So he got a little later start in life on his family. I was 50, and I was definitely in an oops. My dad, he was kind of grumpy, but he grew up in a different time. He grew up in the Great Depression. He went to World War II and seen everything, all the horrors that war can offer in the Pacific Theater, and he moved to Idaho, and that's where he found, solace. That's where he found this is awesome. So he hunted, big hunter, worked in the woods and mechanic and all this stuff. And him and my uncle were both, they would tell hunting stories of that era, of the first move into Idaho. So my dad moved to Idaho in like 1946, I think. And so the region there, the Clearwater region, hadn't been hunted, during the war, World War II. So there's 4 years with no hunting. And previously it would, if you know the history of the area, in 1910, there was a giant wildfire that burned up most of North Idaho. It's the largest forest fire in Idaho history for sure. They call it the Great Burn. Anyway, by the 40s, the 30s and 40s, the elk hunting had exploded. The elk had exploded, and there was insane amount of number. They had more elk there than anywhere else in the world.
Wow.
So him and my dad and his uncle and some of their buddies and my other uncle, they would go take horses up this place and hunt. And he's like, it was crazy. Like the elk trails were like 4-wheeler trails. They're that wide. They're that big, just, and nobody was maintaining these trails besides the elk, so they would go and they would hunt. And if you shot a bull, you were in trouble. Like, hey, why did you shoot that thing, that stinking bull? They all shot cows, I'm like, yeah, but didn't you see?
For packability reasons?
For eatability.
Oh,
yeah. They're
okay.
like, yeah, they stink and they're tough, and they're like, yeah, you got to shoot a cow, like a yearling or a, a 2.5-year-old cow that's nice and tender and delicious.
Yeah.
Don't shoot a bull. So that was kind of their thing. I'm like, well, but did you see any big bulls? Oh yeah, there's big bulls all over the place. And, he would kind of tell stories of that. And, my uncle, he was also a trapper. He would trap. He lived right at the edge of town, and he had a little trap line. He'd go on snowshoes and make like a 5 mile loop and trap and tell stories of that. And, and
Wow.
that area was, back then especially, was wild as could be. So listen to all those stories. That just, it made me want to hunt. And then
Uh-huh.
when I was, I don't know, I was pretty young, probably 7, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in that range. We were watching TV, and I seen these, I think they were Gordon Eastman hunting movies, films and he'd hunted, Northwest Territories and Alaska and wherever else back in the olden days. And man, all I could think was, that's all I want to do. That's what I want to do. And I thought that was the guy's job. Like, you need to pick your job. You can be a doctor, you could be a this, or you could go hunting. I'm like, I told my mom, I said, I want to be a hunter when I grow up. She's like, well, yeah, everybody can be a hunter. I'm like, no, like that guy. And and then I just kind of, once you kind of, as you grow up, you kind of lose those childish thoughts. But I always wanted to be go hunting. And then I read hunting magazines. My dad had them, my uncle had them, and we had stacks of them. I would just go through them. And so fast forward to where I was able to become a hunter and go hunting. By then, my dad, like I said, he was old. He was 50 when he had me. So I'm 13 years old, 14, and he's in his 60s now. So he was kind of over hunting a little bit. He's like, I'll take you, I'll drop you off. I don't really want to go beat the brush, and he had a bad knee and stuff. So I would just go hunt by myself. My mom would take me and drop me off as well. But I was still had this desire. I really want to hunt, and got into bow hunting, and I kind of naturally took to doing calls. Some people really struggle with it. I kind of naturally had a knack for it. So got right into bugling and calling, and then fast forward to where, let's see, I started calling elk when I was 15. So when I was about 17, I met 18. When I was 18, I met a guy. People probably heard his name a lot in the elk hunting world. A guy named Corey Jacobson, and we went to school together in Orfino.
Oh, cool.
And he's like, "You like elk hunting and calling? I like elk. We should go elk hunting sometime." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." So one day after work, we got in my pickup and drove out, and we did some calling. It's like, man, not hearing much. And then we both heard a bugle down the bottom of this nasty hellhole. And there was probably 45 minutes till dark. I'm like, well, let's go down there. So we dive off in there. We never did hear that bugle again. But anyway, we climbed out of there, and then he started telling me all about, these contests. Him and his dad had done the elk calling contests for years. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you should go. You're a good caller. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. So he talked me into it. And the first year I went, I just called like I would call elk, and I didn't do any good. I didn't make it. But I got to see kind of like what the judges are looking for. I'm like, oh, okay, I need to do a better job at this and that and the other thing. So the next time I went, I can't remember if it was the next year or whatever, maybe a year. I did it 2 or 3 years, and eventually I won first place. Well, I won second place, actually. Sorry. Corey beat me, and we're like, we both want to win. He's like, well, my dad owns a call company, so I'll call in the pro division. You call in the men's amateur. I'm like, perfect. So then that's what we did from there on out. So I did that calling competition for several years. And it wasn't really, to me, it really wasn't about like winning some kind of a, I'm the champion of the world. No, they give away some really cool prizes, I'm blue collar as can be. And it's like, I could really use a new rifle scope, or if they're giving away a bow, I'd love to have that. Or there's a rifle, or, some sleeping bags, or camouflage pack, or a camouflage package. And I was like, yeah, I want to win those prizes. And there was some prize money too. I was all about the prizes. I didn't really care anything about any kind of titles or anything. I just wanted the cool stuff.
Oh, that's
So
great.
that was my motivation and why I really did it. And so, and it's funny, there's a couple of different ways to go into the contests. And I, I I've always said I'm not a very competitive person, but what I've understood about myself now, as an older person, is I am super competitive, and I will not play games that I can't win.
Mm-hmm.
So back then, I if I didn't win, which I've I won quite a few times, but I've lost more than I've ever won.
Mm-hmm.
And I would get mad in the beginning. I'd like be so mad. I'm like, I got gypped. That guy, I sound way better because judging, it's there's human judges, and they
Sure.
like this sound or they like that sound, and it's all up to their opinion. So I would get mad. I'm like, man, I should have, I should have won that. Um, and then I'd get over it. And then if the next time I didn't win, I'd get mad about it. And finally I was like, what are you doing? Like, this isn't about that. This is about coming and having a good time, having fun, meeting new
Mm-hmm.
people. Just about getting the heck out of the house, and go and do something fun. So I changed my mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I don't win, it kind of hurts, like, oh man, I really wish I would have won. But, but I, I, I changed my mindset to try to enjoy the whole process. And when people ask me, like, they want to get into the calling, and I'm like, what are your, some advice? And I tell them, first thing, that's the first thing. You don't want to do it because for fun. Don't get
Mm-hmm.
mad. Don't get wrapped up because it's competitive. There's a lot of great callers, so many good callers. And, it's subjective to the judges, whatever they're looking for, and it's not consistent all the time. Sometimes one year they want this sound, the next year they want a different sound, and that's okay. So anyway, that's my story of competition calling and how I got into elk hunting and stuff.
Oh, well, that's great, man. I mean, thinking of the mindset part of it, do you think that you excel in the calling ring because of your skill as a hunter and a caller, or really because of the people that you surround yourself with, since you've kind of changed your mindset on how you approach your calling?
I think my calling has gotten better. It gets polished by elk, right? That's where I look to for guidance on how I sound, and
Mm,
I'm trying to like emulate. If I hear a bull make a certain sound, I'm like, oh, that sounded really cool. I'm gonna start trying to bugle like that. Or a cow, if I hear a cow sound, I'm like, oh man, wow, I need to really work on that and try to
mm-hmm.
sound like that. So that's kind of where I get that kind of guidance as far as that. But I will say, surrounding yourself with people that have been in the calling or calling contest stuff. Um, if you don't know how to make a certain sounds, like, man, like a lip ball. I didn't know a what a lip what. I didn't the first time I ever competed. I'm like, I don't know what's that. And they
Yeah.
showed me, and like, oh, huh, that's weird. And I sucked so bad at it, and it took me a long time to kind of figure it out. But once I did,
Mm-hmm.
then I got it. But so having someone to like ask for help or maybe critique you is good. I'll have guys message me, hey, I want to get into calling. Um, if I send you a video, will you critique it? And so I'm like, all right, I'll critique it. And I try to be as nice as I can. I don't want to offend anybody, but I'll try to be upfront and like, honest too. It's like, oh yeah, man, you really need to work on your grunts or your lip ball. It really needs a lot of work here. And this is what I would do to kind of fix it and kind of try to, you know, let them know. And I think calling in general, if you want your calling to be better, I think we're all guilty of this. We practice what we're good at, and that's shooting, and that's doing anything. You always kind of practice what you're good at. Lifting weights, like, I'm going to go do some curls.
Mm-hmm.
No, those are easy. What do you suck at? Lunges? Okay, that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
Same with calling. So practice the stuff you're good at or you suck at, and then you'll get better, and which in turn always elevates your other calling too. So, because you're just mastering that call.
So for somebody that's new to calling and they're going out west for maybe the first time, or maybe they've been doing it for a while and they haven't connected yet, What are you telling them to start with a call? Maybe bugling's not the best thing to do, or maybe they can bugle a little bit, but they're not very good at some of the other vocalizations.
Mm-hmm.
What's your advice to for them to be able to call something in?
So yeah, I've recorded a series of videos on my YouTube channel. You guys can check
Yeah.
it out anytime. It's just under the Bugler on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
There's another guy with a bugler. I think there's a cheeseburger or something for his icon or his picture or something. So that is not me. But anyway, mine, I have a series, but um, if you're really struggling with learning how to bugle or whatever it is, or chuckle and stuff, man, just break it down to the most fundamental, the most simple parts of making a sound, which I always say, learn to crawl before you walk.
Uh-huh.
Learn how to make sounds with your diaphragm long before you turn that into a bugle or a cow call or a chuckle or a grunt or whatever. So, and it's not fun and it's kind of annoying, but just focusing on making the noises. A lot of people will struggle with that really high pitched noise. Like, man, I can get like halfway up the octaves and it kind of like stalls out. Could be a couple different things. Could be diaphragm control. It could be the diaphragm you're using. So, and I cover that too. Is like, not all diaphragms are made equal. They're all, if there's a different color, they call it something different, whatever. They all have different attributes, and some are like built, and not everybody blows a diaphragm the same. So, it will, if you have to experiment, 3 minimum, maybe 4 or 5 different diaphragms and kind of play with them and see, like, there's probably one of those that's going to go along a lot better with how you call. If you're kind of a loud talker and have a lot of air in your lungs and feel like you can really blow hard, you probably need a diaphragm that's a pretty thick and heavy latex. If you just kind of a quiet guy and or girl, and you don't really have you feel like, I don't have a lot of big lung capacity, or I just don't put out a lot of air in my normal day, everyday conversation, you'd probably struggle with a thick diaphragm. So you maybe need something with a thin latex. So finding the right diaphragm for you is paramount. Find the right diaphragm first, and then practice the sounds. Practice that high pitched noise that I call it kind of a mosquito sound. Practice kind of a siren sound where you go from the lowest note to the highest note to the lowest note to the highest note over and over and over again. And what you're doing is you're teaching your tongue. You're getting that muscle memory. You're teaching your tongue what to do every time you put your diaphragm in. You don't have to search. Like new callers, they'll put them in. They'll put it in like, okay, and they'll try to make a noise and it'll sound wrong. Like, oh, just a minute, I got to get in the right spot. And it takes them kind of a little bit to get it in the right spot. Well, when you're hunting, you don't have time for that, right? You can't be dinking around with trying to, I need a redo on that one. The elk don't want to hear a redo, especially if you're hunting like heavily hunted, public land. Your calls have to be as good as you can make them. So anyway, get comfortable with that, putting that diaphragm in your mouth and being able to make the right sound on command, whether it's just that high pitch or that siren sound. And learning that siren sound, it just gives your tongue that range and an understanding of what you want it to do.
Right.
And consistency. So I tell people, if you can do it, even if you can do it like like every day, 5 to 10 minutes a day for 2 weeks, you're going to see, just practicing fundamentals, you're going to see your normal calling jump up a notch or 2 or 3 or do a lot better. It's because it's all just about that controlling that diaphragm, whether it's your tongue control or your air control.
Yeah. And it's definitely a lot of muscle memory too.
Yeah.
I know when I did watch all your videos before I elk hunted, and that high note on the end of a bugle was really hard for me to hit. But that was one thing I did do was tried a couple different diaphragms. I think I ended up using the dark green amp.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used that one the most, but it was the only one that I could hit that note with. And that was a pretty big difference because I'm hunting with a couple other guys that were like, well, I got this one and I can't do it. And it's like, well, maybe that's, part of it is you do have to kind of just play around with them.
Yeah. And your hunting buddy, he may say, no, this is the very best one ever. And you put it in and you're like, this thing sucks.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a little bit different. And, of course, I want everybody to buy a Phelps call, but, shape of people's mouths or just the way they express air, maybe it didn't work. And, you may have to, experiment with something else. But that's why we got like 16 different
Mm-hmm.
styles of diaphragms, is like for every single mouth shape and the way people express air, we have something that's going to fit.
Right. Right.
So,
Can you look back on a single hunt early on that maybe forced your learning when it comes to elk or anything really? Maybe it's the kind of hunt that when you're out hunting, everything's really hard. You're at the end of a week, whether you're deer hunting, like mule deer, whitetails, elk, whatever it is, and it's one of those hunts where you've just struggled, and it's you almost hate it while you're there. But
mhm.
when you go back, the memories are all fantastic, and you end up loving that. But you realize that because of that hunt, you did learn something that kind of pushed you forward into the rest of your hunting career.
In 2009, that was a tough year. I lost my dad that year. And so that turned your world upside down.
Mm.
I had worked a job that was thankless and I lose my dad. And right before hunting season, he passed away right before archery season.
Oh man.
And it was tough. But my whole life, anytime I've ever been struggling mentally with anything, like whether it's depression or anger or loss or whatever it is, I turn to the woods. I will go to the woods, and even if I sit, you go out there and you sit on a stump for a few hours, or walk on a trail, or hike through the brush and walk through nasty stuff looking for antlers, whatever. Uh, it makes you feel better, and
Hmm.
so immediately, I went to hunting, and it was a tough year for elk. I didn't have a lot of call-ins. It meant we could not buy a bugle, and it was my son's first year of archery elk hunting, and we struggled to get a bull to even answer. And I hunted a lot with him, and then he had to go back to school, and I just kept hunting, and it was tough. But on the very last day, I had a breakdown. I blew a tire out, and then I couldn't
Uh,
get my lug nuts off because I was a tire guy forever, right? And here I am, this tire guy. I'm supposed to be an expert. I don't even have the right. I didn't have one of them stupid special thin wall sockets to get my lug wrench to fit my custom wheels. Couldn't get it
oh
off.
god.
So I had to ride my four-wheeler 25 miles into town to borrow a socket from a buddy, and I drive all the way back, and I find out my buddy gave me the wrong size, because I just assumed he gave me the right one, and he gave me the wrong size. He gave me a 15/16
Oh
instead of a
no.
7/8. So I had to turn around and ride all the way back again on a four-wheeler. It's cold, crappy. This is September 30th.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I get so everything's going wrong. I finally get my tires changed and put it that in the night. Well, I worked at the tire place, and I went in the night. I went and put on my other set of tires, my snow tires for my truck, because we didn't have the right tire in stock. Like, I just would have swapped my whole set of tires and then keep going. I got to hunt in the morning. The next day was the last day, so I get done at midnight dealing with this tire issue, and then get up the next morning. Get up there, and it is a ghost town. I went to all the places I always heard bulls, and the most terrible places you'd ever want to hike. And just no, I'm not getting any bugles. I'm like, this sucks. And so I'm relocating. I see this black bear eating huckleberries on the way over to the next spot, right from the truck. I'm like, man, I could just shoot that thing. I had a rifle with me for just the kind of an occasion. I'm like, what am I doing here? Am I here for elk hunting, or am I here to shoot bears? No, I'm here to hunt elk. So it was cool to see him, and he ran off when I kept going. Anyway, I keep going, and I get to the last hour of the day, and I'm like, man, I have not heard a bull yet. And finally, this last spot, I pull over, I get out, and I bugle. I'm like, this is just I'm just a shot in the dark. I've never even been to this spot before. And I bugle, and a bull answers me across the canyon. And I'm like, that thing, it's a big canyon. It's a deep gorge. He's going to have to drop 500 feet and climb
Mm.
500 feet to me. It's, pretty decent sized canyon. but I keep calling, and man, he's on fire. Pretty soon I can see him. He's running down this old logging road on the other side. Pretty soon he drops down, and he just dropped it. I'm like, oh, he runs out of sight. And I can hear him now. He's in the bottom. Now he's on my side. Here he comes. And anyway, I bugle him right to the road, and I shoot him the last 5 minutes of shooting light, and I kill him. And anyway, I at that moment, it's just like, I could have given up. I wanted to give up. I was just, I didn't want to. It was a struggle, right? I had to deal with the tires. I had a loss in my family. I struggled, and the elk weren't bugling, and but sometimes, that kind of reaffirmed a few things. So, number one, never give up, right? Because it can happen. Like if you have the certain amount of time, you have to hunt from that time to the time you don't have anymore till it's time to go. You can't just throw in the towel early. Also, it reminded me, like, you have to change. Sometimes you got to change scenery, right? You can't just keep pounding the same old places. If you've got to those places you've had a lot of success with, maybe they were earlier in the season or a day or two before. If you heard bulls, but then you get there and you're not hearing nothing. I don't waste any amount of time in places like that. If I'm not hearing bugles, I immediately leave. And then sometimes I'll change locations 50 miles if I got to. I completely almost change zip codes. I got to stay in the same unit, but I'm like, I got to get out of this area. The elk aren't bugling here. And I've done that a lot since. And you'll go from a place that's a ghost town, and you drive and get completely a different location, and elk are bugling. So that was a good defining moment of, it just reaffirmed everything that I had kind of thought in my head, to where now this is religion, right? This is the law. This is what we're doing, from here on out, so that's that.
That's such a good story, man. I love those stories that the stories are what I really do hunting for. I mean, well, there's a lot of good reasons, but that's one of my favorite parts about being a hunter is kind of looking back on that, and after you do something that hard, even though it sucks in the moment, when you look back on it, it's one of the most rewarding things you can do.
Which I will say too, with that kind of a mindset, that kind of a foundation, that kind of a positive reinforcement to, like, give you the confidence, like, this can work. Fast forward, that was 2009. Fast forward 10 years to 2019. I fell down crossing a river or a creek and tore my rotator cuff on my shoulder. I could not draw my bow. And some of your listeners may know about this story, but I couldn't draw my bow, and I was in Wyoming on the second or third day of the hunt. I hadn't even drawn my bow on an elk yet. I'm out. Like, this is September 3rd. I'm done for the month. I can't draw my bow. So I go home and I sit around in my underwear on the couch for like 3 days straight. And my wife's like, "Are you just going to, like, sit here and pout or what?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, kind of." She's like, "Well, why don't you do something about it?" I'm like, "Well, I have been kind of thinking," because I'd seen people use a mouth tab to draw their bow, like old Larry Jones, he did it, and some other people. And I'm like, if they can do it, maybe I can. She's like, "Yeah, I think you probably should." I'm like, "Yeah, I think I will." So got my bow, took it to the local archery shop, told him what I was trying to do. And he's like, I don't know how to do that, but we're gonna figure it out. So I spent the afternoon there, and he set up my bow. I had to reduce the poundage from like 70 pounds down to, I think, 50. And that was as low as it would go. And we attached this mouth tab on there and learned to shoot it. And I'm like, "Oh, wow, this is easier than I thought it'd be." Okay. And I went home, practiced until, I could shoot 20 yards really, really well, 30 yards okay, and 40 not so great. So I was like, okay, keep it at 30 yards and less. And called my camera guy, Dusty Roop, who had earlier told him, like, "Yeah, we're not doing this." And I call him like, "Hey, we're on again if you can go." And he's like, "Yeah, let's go." So turned around, went hunting to North Idaho. And the first night, call in a bull, could have shot it. I'm like, this is only the first evening. We got 10 more days to hunt. I don't think I'm going to shoot it. So I don't know why I didn't. I just, I wanted, it was too early. Like I hadn't had enough September yet. So I didn't shoot this bull. So
Mm-hmm.
then we continued to hunt for this week, and, had some good days and had some bad days. I had some days where you couldn't find nothing. But knowing to change zip codes, change areas, some people, what they don't, they watch the film, it's a 9 or 10 episode series. It seems like we're in elk all the time, but they don't realize in 10 days, I put 1,000 miles on my pickup on dirt roads. So
Yeah.
we moved areas a lot,
Yeah.
you may go, 50 miles one direction one day, complete opposite direction, and then start figuring out that area, but,
Mm-hmm.
and then not to give up, and the day before I killed my bull with my mouth tab, I missed a really nice 6 point. And man, I mean, I could have been just like, screw this mouth tab. I'm going home. This sucks. I'm not going to do it. I'm like, no, I'm going to hunt with every bit of I'm going to see it through all the way to the end. And
Mm-hmm.
the next day, it just, the most textbook call in ever happened, and I was able to shoot a bull, and all the rest is history. But yeah, anyway, you never know when that moment that teaches you something is ever going to, when you're ever going to use it again. It may be the next year, the next hour, it might be 10 years later.
Yeah. Well, one of the first pieces of advice that you gave me was to not leave any stone unturned.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of look at that piece of advice in any hunting that I'm doing, whether it's, uh, whitetails or whatever, because I'm on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not hunting elk every year, but I've taken that to every part of my hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And that story is like, just kind of solidifies that. So you went from having you sitting in your underwear for 3 days to all right, well, I can either do that or I can flip this stone. And it doesn't always mean, I guess what you're saying is, you don't always mean you need to dig the elk out of the hole down in the basin down there.
Mm-hmm.
It could mean that you're changing your strategy or changing your mindset, or kind of, giving yourself the pep talk to do better.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think any bow hunter can kind of translate that "don't leave any stone unturned" and use it for themselves?
Well, one thing I've done, and regretted over the years and identified for myself is, it seems like there's always, those spots that you always hunt your favorite spots, but there's always those ones like, man, one of these days we need to go over and hunt that one ridge or that one
Yeah.
basin or whatever.
Yeah.
But then, time slips by and it's like, we'll go over there next year. And then 5 years goes by, and then finally you go to hunt there and you're like, man, I should have been here 5 years ago. Like, if you've got an intuition or like a hunch or a gut feeling about another
Mhm.
area that you just haven't checked out, man, just go
Mhm.
hunt it. Like, spend
Mhm.
half a day or whatever it is and just go check it off the list. Like,
Mhm.
um, most times that little gut feeling or that intuition is spot on, and you'll get there and be like, man, I'm glad I came over here. This is great.
Mhm.
There's only been a couple times that you get kind of kicked in the teeth and it's like, this sucked. That was a waste of time. But then also it settles your mind where you don't fixate on that anymore. And also marks the spots like, this place is bad. I don't want to come back here. Maybe it's a blowdown jungle. It's just impenetrable. You got to
Mhm.
go fight it to know that it's like, okay, we're never going over there again.
Yeah.
But we all assume and we all have this idea of like where we're going to find our elk and where we're going to kill our elk. But something my dad always told me, which made me mad when he used to tell me this, because I'd be like, I can't wish I could find some elk. And he'd be like, listen, buddy, elk aren't elk aren't where you want them to be. They're where you find them.
Right.
So, or he would just say elk are where you find them, and then it breaks down to they're not necessarily where you want them to be or how you want them to be. It's just kind of where you find them and how you find them. So, um, they don't bugle. How are you going to kill one? How are you going to figure it out? Well, you gotta change your tactics maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So, or just go to a different area or just keep looking until you find them. I think people kind of get spun out on like, well, I've seen elk here before. I'm just going to keep hunting, just pounding this same spot until, for the rest of the season. No, just, you got to get outside of your comfort area and be like, I'm going to try something new, something different. At least. And sometimes it works and sometimes it don't, but at least it'll settle your mind and give you at the end of the season, you can say, well, I left no stone unturned. I tried my best and I didn't get one or it worked out. I got one. That's, I got him.
Yeah. I think something like that is so beneficial when you're talking about the hunting off memories thing that's a big deer hunting thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to grandpa's farm or, whatever place you've hunted forever and ever
Mm-hmm.
and go sit in that same tree stand that you sit year after year. And when you realize that tree stand is dead and it's not producing anymore, you still hunt there
Mm-hmm.
because it's just easier to go where you had one really good experience
Mm-hmm.
than to go find that other place. Because a lot of times, like you said, maybe you are crawling down in that hellhole and it's like, oh, this sucks. And that's happened to you more than once. And then you don't want to go try it again. Or you haven't, you're worried about the time that it'll take to develop the skill to make that find the new place successful more
Mm-hmm.
often,
Mm-hmm.
But I think the more you do it, maybe you only have success once or twice, but eventually you kind of just that can eventually start to just build into your routine. This is just what I do all the time.
Right. And then you just get better at finding critters, whether you're looking for whitetails or elk or whatever it is you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
If you get out of your comfort zone and kind of break those old habits of going to the same old spot, then you start understanding the way elk use terrain or whitetails, whatever it is you're hunting, turkeys. You start understanding the way they use the countryside and the terrain, and then you really become better at like identifying. You can look at the area and be like, oh, I'm going to find elk right over there. You get way better at that, which it takes some work to get there, and it's kind of painful sometimes. You got to weed through the bad spots and the good spots. But once you kind of understand that, you're like, I'll look at a hillside and be like, oh, right there, right in that little spot right there, we're going to find elk right there. We're going to go hunt the whole thing. But in my mind, I'm like, oh, we're going to get into them right there. And a lot of times you do. So it's nice.
Yeah. Why do you think maintaining versatility when you're talking about maybe hunting multi-species is really important to building up on your elk hunting foundation or elk hunting making your other hunts better?
I think they cross over a lot. So let's say you hunt an area that has, hunt deer, elk, turkeys, whatever in it, and bears or whatever. Whatever species that you're hunting, you're also, well, at least I am. I'm looking at other stuff. I'm like, whoa, look at that big old whitetail rub over there. Wow. I've seen some old, a huge community scrape whitetail. Man, I wouldn't have thought there's whitetails in this country. Wow, I'm gonna have to come back during deer season and hunt it. I'll do that, or man, there's tons of bear crap here. There's bear tracks everywhere and tons. My camera's always got bears on them, whatever. Like it's so important to like be able to utilize all that information. And also if you're paying attention to that sign and reading that sign of other species besides elk, it just makes you better later on when you're hunting deer to look at sign, interpret it, and try to, where was that deer going? Why, you look at the side of the tree the rub is on. Okay, well, that deer was probably traveling this direction when he made that rub, right? And you start piecing things together in that regard. So I think it's pretty important to kind of to utilize all those things, all those clues, and I think it'll make you a better hunter all the way across the board. And then also, with I feel like I had a interesting and good childhood to where and young early hunting career, acquiring target, getting on an animal and making a good shot. One thing I always say that makes me a good hunter is my dad and I would do a ton of grouse hunting. So grouse hunting for us wasn't like you didn't take a dog out and you walked out through the brush with this dog. No, in Idaho, and most of the locals do it like this. You get in your pickup and you drive these old country roads, these old grassy logging roads, and you putt around and you look for grouse. You got to jump out and shoot these grouse before they fly off. Well, man, if you didn't get out of the truck quick enough, and if you didn't get on target quick enough, and if that grouse got away, man, my dad, he was like, I can't believe you let that thing get away, man. He'd give me a pretty hard time about it. And, and plus myself, I would be like, I can't believe, I should have had that thing, man. And I try to identify every little thing. And one thing I identified throughout the whole process is, where am I making mistakes when I, and it could be used this ain't just road hunting, right? Where am I making mistakes between the time I see an animal and I
that was your
squeeze
first
the
mistake,
trigger? Road hunting, right? So where am I making my mistakes? And I utilize this, whether I'm bow hunting elk or whatever. So when I first see the elk, so I call in a bull, and here he comes. The first time I catch a glimpse, or I can tell he's coming, right? I see an antler tip or I see anything. Okay. At that very moment, and I've already done it up to there, but I'm going to do it again. I'm going to quickly assess my gear. I'm going to make sure I don't have any branches that are going to get caught up in my wheels of my bow and my cams. I'm going to make sure I'm holding my bow correctly. I'm not death gripping it. I've already got kind of some tension on it, and I've already got my grip that all I have to do is pull my bow. I don't have to fidget around, and my grip is going to be good. It's not going to produce any torque. Joel Turner calls this shot process, right? What are you going to do? So that shot process, and I'm not trying to piggyback or steal any of his information, but you have to identify all the places that are going to go wrong between the first time you see this animal until you pull the trigger. And anyway, why I say this is because, all the grouse hunting and then all the whitetail hunting I did as a kid, I got to hunt a lot, kill a lot of deer, a lot of grouse. But it's all relative, right? If you've never taken the life of an animal, and watched the nuance of their body language and practice from the first time you see it till you finally make a shot, there's a lot that can go wrong, and there's a lot of times like you need to shoot right now. I'll watch it on YouTube a lot. You watch people on YouTube, it's like you see the elk coming, pretty soon you're like, why aren't you drawing your bow? Why aren't you shooting? Shoot, pull the trigger now. And then the elk gets away every time. And it's like, man, like there's all these little steps, but that's relatable. I don't care if you're squirrel hunting or turkey hunting or wild pig hunting. Like if you're an aspiring elk hunter and you just haven't got a lot of reps with actually pulling the trigger on an animal, that should be a main goal. And it's relatable to every species, it don't matter. So you got to get comfortable with seeing the animal, acquiring the target, whether you use a bow or a rifle, getting on the animal. I've seen grown men that struggle with, they pull up, they can't get the animal in their scope, on their crosshairs. They struggle with that. Like there should be no reason why you can't pull your rifle to your eye immediately and have that animal in your scope. That just means you haven't done your off-season practice and you haven't got enough reps looking at an animal through your scope, right? Or a target. So going to the range, I mean, that's pretty easy. Like, let's sit here and get nestled in here and, on the bench and, find the target and shoot. Like anybody can do that, but it's that standing prone, pulling up, find your target, make your shot, from zero to shooting. That there's all these little things that you have to connect. It's like a comedy of errors. I always say to kill an elk, it's a comedy of errors until you finally kill one. And it's like, there's so many things that can go wrong. So there's only a few things you can control, but you have to eliminate those from your shot process, so to speak, before you ever can kill one, unless you just get super lucky. So anyway, get good at killing stuff. Go hog hunting, go squirrel hunting, get lots of reps pulling the trigger on animals. And that way, by the time you get to draw back on a big bull or get a bull in your crosshairs, it's going to feel familiar and you'll have confidence, and it'll be a lot smoother transition for sure.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And that's one thing I think, everybody wants to shoot a big buck in the East, we got a white, but nobody buys doe tags. I mean, plenty of people buy doe tags, but everybody wants to hunt the buck first.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I want to kill a couple of these
Mm-hmm.
does before I get that buck in front, because I know I have problems with buck fever, and
Yeah.
I know I'm going to get wired up and whatever. But if I can pull, like you said, if I can pull the trigger on a few does before I get that buck in front of me, some of that's muscle memory and some of it's just going through the motions without having to think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
What do you think? What do you think the average hunter obsesses about that doesn't really matter?
I think here's one you see on the interwebs and all the time. People obsess over arrow weight and FOC. Like,
Mm,
oh my God, is this the right arrow? Like they will like spend so much time chasing perfect FOC, arrow weight, and all this stuff. Like it is important to a degree, but
mm-hmm.
we killed the crap out of elk with arrows that we didn't know anything about. How much I never weighed and knew how much my arrow weighed for
Yeah.
years, like until, let's say 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
it got to be so popular. People ask me like, hey, what's this and what's that? I'm like, I don't know. It says my arrow's this long and this is the broadhead I use. And these are the fletchings. They were the factory fletchings, whatever. People get so spun up on that, chasing that perfect weighted arrow. I've killed elk with a 300 grain arrow. I've killed elk with a 530 grain arrow.
Mm-hmm.
I've had pass throughs with a not a 300 grain arrow, a 400 grain arrow. I've had pass throughs with a 400 grain arrow. I've had pass throughs with a 530 grain arrow. So
Mm-hmm.
the right answer, there's no perfect answer. I will say, and this is all opinion. This is for Western hunting. There's a guy named Ranch Fairy that talks about, oh, you guys are shooting child arrows. You guys need to shoot adult arrows. These 800 grain or whatever he said. Some
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous weight of arrow. It's like, man, if you want to miss a lot, you go ahead and shoot one of those kind of arrows out here in the West,
Yeah.
because you can shoot from 5 yards to 55 yards, let's say, and those arrows, there's so much pin gap. Unless you're really good at identifying pin gap and where you need to hold your pins on each. So let's say
Mm-hmm.
the buck or the bull is 50 yards or 53 yards, and you aim with your 50-yard pin because you're excited.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 yards on a arrow that heavy is going to
Mm-hmm.
may have a definite big impact. Number one, it's going to be slower. So it's
Right.
going to take longer to get there. The bull's going to have a longer time to react. Number two, there's quite a bit of arrow drop for an arrow
Mm-hmm.
that heavy in 3
At
yards.
53 yards.
Yeah. So there's less precision. There's less room for error. If
Mm-hmm.
you're sitting in a blind or a tree stand and you just really have everything mapped out where the yardage, and that's a different thing. But we don't always have, if you're hunting elk, you're running gun and elk, sometimes you just don't have a chance to range him. He's coming. I moved up a little bit. Now he's coming. Here he comes. I don't have time to range find it, because if I do, I'm going to miss getting to draw my bow and shoot him.
Right.
Right. So I kind of find a middle ground on arrow weight. Like for me, it's like 450 grains ish. And I have a decent, pretty narrow pin gap. That way, if I shoot him for 40 and he was 45 or 43, I'm still going to hit pretty decently. I might hit 4 inches low. So that's important to me. So I think people get pretty spun up on that.
Yeah.
More than, I think they waste a lot of energy chasing the perfect arrow when you can kill them with a 400 grain arrow to 550 grain arrow. So it's anywhere in there is going to do a good job. Just look at your pin gap and what kind of hunting you're going to be doing, and you're going to be just fine.
Yeah.
Broadheads, there's a lot of debate on that. Things that make a lot of blood come out, I'm a big fan of. 3 blades. I haven't got enough experience with expandables to really, say a lot. I've been using them lately. I've shot some deer with expandables and they work great. I haven't shot an elk yet with one, but it's all placement too. You have to hit them right. You shoot an elk in the knuckle bone of his shoulder there with even with the most expensive 2-blade broadhead on the market, you may not get the penetration you want. So
Yeah. Agreed. So what do you talking about the obsessive things and how people find out about them, what do you think the good and the bad influences of social media are when it comes to hunting?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of good influences where people that just didn't know about the way the world works for archery or shooting, in general, like rifle shooting and stuff. There's a lot of good information. Like if you want to learn something, it's great on social media. Like always willing to learn something new. It's like, oh wow, I didn't realize that. That's
Mhm.
really cool. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I'd never thought of that. That's interesting. So you can learn some really good stuff on there. Um, there's a lot of misinformation too. People will sell you so hard on how good this practice is or this thing is to where it's like, oh, it's got to be good, and then you're just like, no, that's dumb. And why would you do it like that? Or why
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
that's not real. That's a gimmick. I feel like that's kind of the bad. And then another bad thing I think is social media. The worst thing of social media for hunting is just all the bickering and all the chest thumping and all that stuff. Like I see stuff all the time. I'd like to call BS on. Like, oh, okay, that's stupid. But what am I going to achieve by calling it out? That's stupid.
yeah,
I might find 2 or 3 people that give it a thumbs up and like it and be like, oh, I found 3 people that agree with me. Or I may, now I'm going to spur an argument with the person who said it. And
yeah,
now we're going to have to spend the next half a day, bickering back and forth about, why he's wrong and I'm right. Nothing good comes of it. In the end, you've done nothing but waste a bunch of your time. People are
yeah,
pretty committed on their thought process. And even if you were to convince them, their ego will stand in the way of them saying, you know what, you're right, man. It doesn't happen very often where people are going to be like, oh, I never thought of that. Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah, you just might as well just leave it be. Don't get on there and bicker. Um, I don't see if you, I don't know if you've ever got any of those PETA pages or any of those animal rights group pages.
oh, geez.
Those people don't bicker with each other. They just bicker with all the idiot hunters that get on there and try to convince them that hunting is good. They're
Yeah,
just like, you guys are sick, demented. There's a special place in hell for you. They'll talk like that. And then the
yeah,
hunters try to convince them. And it's like, you're wasting your time. Just,
yeah. Well, and you know what's funny about hunters doing stuff like that is like you engaging in that in social media is only just driving that algorithm.
Mhm.
You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like
Oh,
that
yeah.
that kind of stuff is like if it gets attention, it's gonna get pushed.
Mhm.
So kind of in a sense, even if you're saying something negative to them, it's just better to just
Mhm.
let it go.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And if it's,
promote what you can promote and just forget about the rest. You know.
yeah. And if you can't sit there and if it's not something you would say right to somebody's face,
Uh-huh.
be like, yeah. Or maybe you might say something, but you might choose your words a little differently, right? You might
Uh-huh.
say, I
Uh-huh.
don't really agree with that, but, you know, because it's really easy to say whatever you want on the social media
Yeah.
platform, but to say it to somebody's face, that's not as easy. And if there was a
Yeah.
time if you said the wrong thing to people, they might just punch you.
Yeah. Too bad we can't go back to that
Right?
sometimes.
Yeah, I know. You're just like, man, you'd never get away with saying that stuff
Jason Phelps, I'm
30
gonna let
years
him
ago.
know what yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, how do you think that hunting has affected your life outside the woods?
Um, a lot of really well. It's kind of my reason to do stuff. It's my reason to go to work. It's my reason to, before I worked in the hunting industry, it's still my reason to go to work. Like I can't go
Uh-huh.
hunting and buy and have time off and buy the hunting gear I want without going to work. I can't, and the fun little things that, maybe a 4-wheeler or a side by side or whatever, the stuff that you use, the fun equipment, the toys that kind of go along with it.
Yeah.
You gotta work. Been a driver, to earn and work hard.
Uh-huh.
So, and then it's also, like I say, it's just been that, that reset button from when life gets too real and too serious and too heavy to where I can go and reset and recharge.
Uh-huh.
Hunting with a camera guy a lot. I like hunting with people, but it's kind of nice if I can just go by myself a little bit too, because I love that.
Yeah.
Just like go out there, be by yourself, just no distractions, unwind things. Think about no distraction. You can think about all sorts of stuff. You get good solutions. Sometimes in a suck fest during hunting, then that's when you find your best solutions for life's problems.
Yeah. Do you find that you connect faith to hunting pretty often and what you
Uh,
believe in?
um, I think there is a degree of that. You're out there and it's like, this stuff didn't happen on its own, right? It didn't just
Mhm.
evolve from the elk or a horse didn't evolve from Eohippus or whatever, they try to tell us. There's more to it than that. So yeah, but also I feel like, there's a lot of different ways you can worship. People want to go to a church and that's good for them. Great. And
Mhm.
I'm not going to judge anybody on how they do want to worship, but I feel like, if that's where you do your best time, that go to the woods, give
Mhm.
give give it the best version, give God the best version of yourself and most honest version of yourself that you can give. So if that's in the middle of a mountain somewhere, great. If that's in a church somewhere with lots of like-minded people, that's great too.
Yeah. Well, I do find that you've used your influence to impact people, and you're really ready to give advice, and you've taken the time to put all that stuff on YouTube and do seminars and podcasting and all that kind of stuff. And I get the vibe that you didn't just do it for you. You did it to make a difference in hunting and in somebody's life.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the reasons I had you on, is because you, like I said, you were somebody that gave me advice on my very first elk hunt. You didn't have to, I just said, like, told you what I was doing, and you told me check every drainage. Look, just follow drainages. And
Mm-hmm.
I probably have a picture somewhere of all the pins on drainages, and I ended up killing the elk on the first day, so I only had to check a handful. But
Yeah.
but I think it's so important that we take the time to actually think about what kind of impact we're making, or what direction we want to take our impact when
Mm.
it comes to this kind of stuff. Because we're dealing with all this stuff with fighting for public lands, and like you said, there's so much social media, and there's a lot of bickering that goes on, and we're shooting holes in our own boat. And I think it's really important that you kind of take the time to think about your impact to make sure it's going the right direction. So if you were to say, if you were to give advice to Dirk year one from Dirk now, what would that advice be?
Oh man. Uh, that's tough. I've
It's
I've
hard to
hunt.
pick one thing, I'm
I'd like to
sure.
say it's like at first I'd like to say, hey, hunt more.
Yeah.
Man, I hunted a lot. Even even when I had a job that I didn't get vacation time, and I only could work weekends. Like spent every weekend hunting. But I feel like one thing of advice I would give myself definitely is when taking my kids hunting, is
Mm,
don't burn them out. Don't
mhm,
make it like this isn't like when you take the kids, it's not about what I want at that point. It's like, okay, what's going to make this fun for the kids? Um, they don't have the discipline and the resilience I do because I've had so many past experiences to know and to understand that if we do this, chances of having success, the outcome is going to be really good. But kids, small, especially in their very first hunting, it they don't have that. They haven't been doing it long enough. They just see it as a grind, as a suck
yeah,
fest, right?
yeah,
So you got to make it fun. And I feel like if I could do it all over again, I would definitely have it be less intensive, instead of taking them on death marches and, making it so tough, and I'm just like, all right, come on, you can do this. Um, I should have focused more on them making sure they were having fun while we're doing it.
mhm,
And I do regret that. And I wish I would have focused more on that. Now my son is older. I feel like he's matured enough to where he understands hard work and
mhm,
discipline and suck.
mhm,
He's been going hunting the last couple of years with me more, and he likes it, right? It's better. It's a better experience. But before he's just like, we always go and it's a lot of sweating and we didn't get one or whatever. And it's like, no, it's not about that, but, feel like I should have done better with that. I'd give my younger self, because I started having kids when I was 21, right? I was 51 now. So I was pretty young when I started having kids, but, I do that. And then, I don't know. I feel like I did a lot of things good and right. Maybe I might have told myself, find a job. And I tell my kids this too. I'm like, I'd have told myself, find a job that gives you enough time to hunt as much as you want, or do the things you love as much as you want.
Yeah.
Well, for me, that's hunting. So, I worked, a job that sucked. It was a soul sucking job for a lot of time. And I missed out on, I did hunt a lot, but I missed out on, I could have hunted more if I'd had a different job with, I worked every Saturday for a lot of years. So my days off were always kind of split up, except I could get one Saturday a month off.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, it kind of sounds like a weird thing, but I try to tell my kids, because I think everybody seems like these days is like, oh, find your passion and turn that into work and do that as for a living. But when you take your passion, and it's a very slippery slope, if you take your passion and make your job out of that, your passion becomes work. And then you feel like, maybe it's not as fun as you really want it to be. Now it's like, I have to do this for work. It's work, right?
Yeah.
Work is something people usually pay to do, not because it's fun. It's because it's something needs done, right? So I always try to tell them, like, no, like my son's like, oh, I'm gonna get a photography and videography and do that for a living because I really like it. I'm like, yeah, but it will become work. My daughter, she did photography, put herself through college doing photography study. She did student like graduation photos and weddings and stuff.
Wow.
And she won't hardly pick up a camera now because she loved doing photography. And then it is such a grind where she's just like, I don't really want to pick up a camera anymore. So, find something that will support your passion. Find a job that gives you enough time and pays you enough money to support your passion, and do that. Then that way your passion is unadulterated. It's like, it's all fun. Now me, I get to hunt. Elk hunting and hunting is my passion. I'm pretty lucky in that same regard. I say all that, but I'm pretty lucky in the same regard to where I can still like harness that passion and enjoyment for it, and not let it, not let work, intrude during the hunt. Right. Now, leading up to the hunt, I'm kind of pulling my hair out a little bit. It's like, oh man, I got to have all this stuff done and in the works before I leave for a month, because a lot of people think, oh yeah, Dirk, you just hunt for a living. Man, that'd be awesome. Like that's all they see, but the backside of it, is like, no, I have to have, emails curated for a month and work with everybody in our chain of our company to make sure, whether it's the creative and this is the guy that's going to push the button to send the email. And then there's that. And then there's all this other marketing stuff that kind of goes with it, and that people don't normally see. So, there's a lot of pressure. So to where it's like, oh man, hunting, I can't, it's time to go hunt, man. I wish I had like another week, because you're just digging through it, trying to set yourself up to be gone. But once I'm gone, I don't think about work again.
It's really good advice. And I'm a registered nurse, and I kind of, it's like a family thing. Everybody's a nurse in my family, but it's kind of like, I didn't realize it when I was in school, because I always wanted to do, like, I like music. So I was going to go do like church music. And I thought about, oh, maybe I'll do something in the outdoors, or maybe I'll do this and that. And I decided to go to nursing school, and it's built in that I only work 3 days a week, and I'm full time, and once I always hunted, like I grew up same way as you, like always hunted, did all that stuff. But once I realized, like, I get 4 days off a week, or I can be in a tree or out in the field with a bird dog or whatever it is. And it's like, all right, well, kind of glad I didn't do those things that I love,
Mm-hmm.
for that reason. And it is, I don't love being a nurse. I'm pretty good at it, but I don't love doing it. But it is one of those things that can afford, I even though I don't necessarily enjoy it, I like what it means to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can get through a day, but then I get all that extra time to go do what I actually do love. So
Oh yeah.
that is excellent advice. Um, what is, before we get off of here, maybe you already told this story, so if you did, it's no big deal. But what is one hunt that really meant the most to you?
Man, this fall I've got a lot of really memorable hunts and emotional hunts, but this fall um had a special hunt with my son Austin. Him and his wife, they last year they were expecting, and then in January they gave birth to their first son and my second grandson.
Mm-hmm.
And partway through the pregnancy, we found out he had a disorder with his heart, that only half of his heart grew correctly. So he had a full size heart, and on the other side it didn't grow. So, but we're looking at options, and the bright side was there's other kids that have had this, and they could get surgeries done. The first surgery would be done right after birth, and then another surgery would be done in 6 months, and then another surgery would be done at, let's say, 3 or 4 years old, and then there possibly could be another surgery later too. And lots of success stories. And then he was born, and they found out that he had a little more going wrong, and they had to do an emergency surgery before they ever did the first planned surgery. So they did that, and what they found out is his there was a little valve in there that was creating too much pressure, internal pressure on his lungs. This is the most layman's term, and I'm going to probably get a layman's explanation. Probably get it wrong too. My wife would probably say, "Yo, you told it wrong." But basically, it built too much blood pressure in his lungs, which damaged his lungs, irreversible damage. And then when he took his first breath, it even was worse. So unfortunately, he lived 6 days and passed away. So pretty tough here for my son and his wife and our family.
Yeah.
And I always like I say, you go to the mountains, you go to the woods to kind of get a reset. And he's like, "Yeah, we're gonna go elk hunting." So I'm like, "Great." So we went hunting in September. So Silas, his little son, was born. That was January. So some time has gone by, and so we went elk hunting, and in a typical fashion, it was tough. It was, there were bulls bugling under every brush and every bush and in every drainage. It's like, man, we were struggling. And it was pretty early in the season, which I kind of knew it was going to be a tough hunt, but we kept grinding. And the second to last day of the hunt, then we found, we got a bullet bugle. And man, this bull is, at first he sounded, like he's pretty hot, but then as we approached him and got set up, he kind of seemed like he was less hot. And I was just thinking, I'm like, man, we're gonna have to go up this hill, because the last time he bugled, he sounded kind of a long ways away, and I'm kind of standing right out in the open where I wasn't hidden. My son was up, where we intended the bull to come through, and I'm back where he wouldn't be able to see me, and I'm standing there thinking, man, we need to move up. And I kind of look up the hill, and that bull's standing right there looking at me, and then he starts raking his horns. Like, he's like within range of me. He's like 40 yards away. I'm like, oh, geez. And I don't have my bow, because I want my son to kill Austin, to kill this bull. So as he's rubbing his antlers on this tree, I just get down on the ground and kind of lay there and try to hide. And then I look up, and here he comes, and he walks right down the hill towards me. I'm like, oh man, like I don't, and where Austin's position was, like, he's never going to shoot this thing. He's never going to be able to get an arrow through an opening or or nothing. And I should have brought my bow, because I'm going to have like a 5-yard shot at this thing, or closer. This thing's just coming right to me. And about that time, I hear my son go, meh. He makes his meh noise. He didn't use a reed. He's like, meh. And the bull stops, and he shoots him. He whacks him, and
Oh man.
thing runs up just out of sight, 20, 30 yards, and dips over dead. But that was memorable, just because it was a bright spot in our year, and it was been such a tough year. And I think, getting into the woods and having experiences, and it lets you kind of like clear your mind and maybe forget about the heaviness of the reality of our lives for that very moment. And Austin was just over the moon excited and happy about shooting this elk. So, that's a pretty awesome hunt in my mind. And I know that, and also I think back to our earlier conversation about, defining moments of when, you have a theory and it's proven, you prove it, like, hard work, sticking it out, it can happen, and it will happen. I think that was like a huge, like, confidence booster for him. So, he immediately started making plans for next year's elk hunt, like, in which, normally I'd have to kind of like, oh, we're going to go elk hunting or what? But it was immediately, he was like, trying to make plans for next year's hunt. So I think he was just like, okay, now he's getting that confidence. So like, yeah, you're just, we're going to, chances are, you might get an elk again, So, and then it was nice to just kind of have that escape from the heaviness of life, for that very moment. So,
Yeah.
But so we videoed this, and I'm getting choked up here a little bit, but
That's okay.
Austin keeps some of Silas's ashes in a little necklace around his neck, and as soon as he shot, he reaches up and held onto the necklace. So even in that intense moment, he was wanting to share that with his son. So it was a pretty emotional day. So yeah, it was awesome.
I love that story. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. It's hard to share. I haven't shared that with anyone, but
yeah, it's something. Working in medicine, like, I kind of have an idea of, those moments that you spend in the hospital with your family and stuff. And I've gone through that with a lot of other family members, and just everybody processes things so differently. And that is just something that I can't fathom, but getting to share that moment with your son and getting to see that memory that he could hold on to is just, you can't replicate that anywhere.
Yeah.
You couldn't have. But with that, Dirk, where can people find you? Where can we learn from you?
You can find me on Instagram. It's the Bugler, one word. And like I mentioned before, YouTube, the Bugler, one word. Not the guy with the cheeseburger, but you'll see my Bugler logo on there. And then I'm on TikTok even now. Believe it or not,
dancing and stuff.
Yeah, believe it or not, I'm on TikTok. I haven't got no dancing, but I do put some different stuff that I normally put on my other social on there. So if you're a TikToker, I'm on there. You may or may not like it. But let's see where else. Facebook, of course. But yeah, that's where you can find me. And all my hunts, are on Phelps Game Calls YouTube channel. So all my recent hunts from, like, let's say the year 2021 to 2021 to current are on Phelps YouTube channel. So if you want to come watch some cool hunts, we just had one drop a few weeks ago, right before Christmas. Awesome. My Oregon elk hunt. So you can go check that out too. So
awesome. Well, what I really think you need to do is if you want a successful elk hunt, just book the bugler and you got yourself your silver bullet. But
well, I don't know. Sometimes, like last year, I don't think I even drew my bow back once. I don't know.
Oh.
I only carried a couple days though.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it so much, Dirk. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, anytime, man.
Well, that's a wrap in camp. I hope that you were as touched as I was from that episode. Thanks so much for listening week after week. If you would check out Dirk on his Instagram page and his YouTube channel, I will add all his links in the show notes to be available for you. Thanks again for taking the time out of your week after week to listen. I really appreciate it, guys. Have a blessed week. Hope it's a good one. This is InCamp Podcast.